I would I would go so far as to say that I was a very good athlete. Growing up, that's pretty much what I did. I played sports through high school and through college. In high school, I did basketball and baseball and track and field, and in college, I did basketball and baseball, and I was very successful. I was very successful at it. But in college, what happened along the way was that while I was a biology major studying pre-med courses and planning to go to medical school, I discovered art. This was at Princeton University. And one semester, along with all my science courses, I took a drawing course. The artist in residence at Princeton at that time was a man named Stephen Green. And he taught a drawing course and a painting course. And they were kind of anomalies within the art department because at Princeton in those days, they didn't have studio majors. You could only, if you wanted to study art, you could only study art history. And so the courses were pass-fail. And I always thought that that was probably because they didn't figure making art had intellectual content, so it would make them pass-fail. There weren't any other pass-fail courses in the university at the time. This was in the late 1950s.
Okay.
And so I took this drawing course with Steve Green, and it's corny, kind of corny to say it, but it sort of changed my life because I discovered art. And
was this in some of the same classes with Frank Stella?
Well, the drawing course met once a week, one evening a week. It wasn't like a formal course that met 3 times a week like you would have in a normal curriculum. But it was the case that Frank Stella, who was a year ahead of me at Princeton at that time, he used to hang around that studio, and he used to use that space in order to make paintings. And so I became aware of this guy, and his name was Frank Stella. And I sort of knew who he was, and he sort of knew who I was because I was also a basketball star, and he was always followed what was going on in the sporting scene. And in any case, I took that course, and then I started taking some art history courses in the second half of my junior year and my senior year, and I got more and more interested in art while I was getting ready to graduate as a biology major, and I had been accepted to medical school. I got into the University of Pennsylvania and to the at Columbia College of Physicians and Surgeons, and I was all set to go to Columbia for med school.
Yeah.
But then I decided at the last minute, or late in the game in any case, that I would apply to graduate school in art history. And I applied to a couple of schools, including Princeton. And Princeton accepted me and gave me some money And so at the last minute, in the late spring, I decided I would stay at Princeton and study art history instead of going to medical school. Mm-hmm. And that's how I made that change. And so I stopped playing sports. But I did play sports another time. My first year in graduate school was 1959-60. And at that time, I kind of lost interest in sports. I had discovered other things in the world, like art, you know, and art history, and that was all very exciting. And sports was just sports.
Yeah.
See, it's like I'd had enough of that. But then the second year I was in graduate school, I got itchy, and I got itchy, and so I thought maybe I would go play some basketball if I could. And I got in touch with people in the Eastern League. The Eastern League was like a minor league of the NBA. It doesn't exist any longer. Okay. It was replaced by the Continental Basketball Association, which was in turn has been replaced by the NBA Developmental League. The Eastern League was like a minor league. There were only 8 NBA teams at that time. And when I graduated, I was drafted by the Philadelphia Warriors, as they were known then. And they're now the Golden State Warriors. But I didn't have any interest then in trying to become a professional basketball player, because you didn't make any more money being a professional basketball player than you did doing anything else, unless you were some superstar like Wilt, you know, or Bill Russell or somebody like that. So anyway, I got in touch with somebody, and I decided I'd play basketball, and I made the team. I played for a year in the Eastern League. I started out playing with Wilkes-Barre, the Wilkes-Barre Blue Barons, and then I got traded to the Scranton Miners. And that year I played against some of the great basketball players of their time. I played against basketball players who had been banned from the NBA in the early 1950s for point shaving scandals. It was a big scandal, yeah. And there were players there who were never allowed to play. They were banned from the NBA. Players like Bill Spivey from Kentucky and Sherman White from LIU. These were all Americans. And they would have been stars in the NBA. And they were still playing at the beginning of the 60s in the Eastern League. 2 games a weekend. I made $50 a game playing basketball. And I played against those guys. And that was a great experience, because I realized that I was a pretty good ball player, you know. I mean, I wasn't as good as them, but I could hold my own against them. And that was kind of satisfying, because up to that point I thought, well, you played in the Ivy League, right? What's the Ivy League? Geez, we used to go out on Christmas trips, and we'd play against Big Ten teams. I remember we played at Ohio State one year, as a matter of fact. And Ohio State, you know, guys like, there was a guy, Frank Howard, played for Ohio State. John Havlicek was there. Great basketball players. They used to kill us, you know. So I always thought, well, I was good in the Ivy League. But the year in the Eastern League sort of gave me the sense that I could hold my own in higher competition, some of the best players of the time. And having satisfied myself on that, I never played after that. I took up tennis after
Oh, okay.
I was an adult. So anyway, that's how I got interested. That's how I got involved with art and the study of the history of art.
I'm reminded of the book that I think his name was Sidney Bernstein did on Frank Stella.
Sidney Guberman.
Guberman, that's it.
Sidney Guberman, yes, he's a friend.
Yeah, and it had a picture of Frank in the studio with Stephen Green.
Steve Green, yeah.
And they're both sitting there smoking.
Oh yeah. What was the next question? So going to school with at the same time as Frank was a year ahead of me. I remember that Frank in 58, when he graduated, he had a show in the art building of his paintings.
Okay.
And he had started to paint stripes then,